With any luck, this video won't be coming out of just your left ear in audio, like today's one was earlier. Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about points of interest. Yeah, a lot of stuff's going on. There's Gamescom. Apparently there's going to be some big news tomorrow on Saturday. There was points of interest a second ago. The beta is running. The WTS is tomorrow as well. Yeah, apparently ArenaNet like to bundle a lot of stuff together. So, let's just take it piece by piece. Specifically on POI, we had two big sections. One was Ruby talking to developer Josh Diaz, who had been working on this new mastery track that will affect the game globally, the central Tyria regions, as well as the Heart of Thorns area. And this is what was alluded to in an article by IGN just the other day, as we were talking about. This is the Pact Commander Mastery. After that, Colin came on. The majority of this video is going to be talking about the Pact Commander Mastery, but I do want to touch a little on what Colin said. There was a lot of talking. A lot of it generally was fluff that we'd heard about before, but was nice to hear iterated in a different way, I suppose, and talked about from him. Though, here's some specifics that I do want to mention. First, he very clearly said, look, what we're adding with Heart of Thorns, the fractals updates and the mastery system, the elite specialization system, all of these systems that they're adding that are supposed to be scalable. We hear this quote constantly, oh, this is something we're going to add to over time. This is something we're going to add to over time. About a month ago now, maybe a little bit earlier than a month ago. In fact, I've been mentioning this for a long time, but I did a video quite plainly saying, we keep hearing this line that they're going to continue adding stuff, and how much confidence do we have that they're actually going to do that? You can see stuff like the World versus World tracks and the original implementation of fractals that were then never touched on as systems that they'd already put in the game that were supposed to be continually expanded on. And I talked about how I'd lost a lot of confidence in this saying, and it kept coming up for Heart of Thorns. And then enter Colin today, and it seems to me he's really touching on this note. He said specifically, these systems that they're adding in Heart of Thorns, we hear this word a lot, but they don't want to keep going back and iterating on old systems. They don't want to keep wasting time doing like these revamps, trying to get it right. Look at the amount of changes we've seen to the daily, the monthly, and like the login reward system, okay? He said that now these systems that are going in, they don't want to be going back to constantly, and really when they say they will be expanded over time, I think he's trying to give us some confidence that that's true. Of course, words are just words, and time will tell whether this really happens. I think a lot is riding not just on the release of Heart of Thorns, which is of course getting closer now with some of their recent statements, but to me, I'm very curious about that next 2 weeks to month after Heart of Thorns release. That gap, and it's going to be difficult to be an employee at ArenaNet because I feel like they're on a massive crunch right now, and I don't want to relieve that crunch. I don't want them to have, let's have a month taking it easy because we were just released. I really feel like very quickly off of the heels of Heart of Thorns release, I want to hear about these systems that they keep talking about actually getting their updates. Getting Living World Season 3 pushing out quickly, getting those new legendaries, getting the new masteries, and so on. Perhaps even, a convincing end to the expansion, because it's also very possible that we won't even get to destroy Morgemoth in the expansion itself. Nothing says necessarily that will happen. That could be pushed off for Season 3. And in those situations, it has to be quick that they immediately show to the community, more updates are coming, don't uninstall the game, after just 2 weeks. Anyway, so a couple of other things from Colin. He did talk a long time. He said that the nighttime stuff we're seeing in the beta, I'll be doing a video, at least one, specifically on a ton of the beta stuff itself, but he said that night that we're seeing in Verdant Brink is still an early iteration of nighttime, and this is kind of contrary to a previous statement we'd heard saying that night had been updated, but we'll have to go in and play the map to see how much has really changed. Next is kind of something he mentioned on the stream and something off stream too in a Reddit comment, and this is to do with the 3 biome system. Specifically, he talked about how the new maps they're adding are very dense, and actually in terms of physical size in the world, they might be smaller than say some of the other big maps already, like Lorna's Pass. That's going to happen, but because of the 3 biome system, we're getting a lot of events, and it kind of makes up for that. Now, you've had a lot of people say this kind of thing. You've heard me say this as well a lot too, that they don't even necessarily have to add too many Heart of Thorns maps. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, because these maps are going to be very dense with content. And here's the thing, a lot of people then take that and go even further and say, the map is worth triple a regular map. It's got an entire world underneath it, an entire world in the middle, and an entire world in the sky. Colin actually touched on this and explained not only is that not universally true, you're not going to have an entire map underneath and an entire map above and an entire map in the middle. They'll be splotchy. But more importantly, not every, and this is new as far as I can tell, not every single Heart of Thorns map will have that 3 biome system. Specifically, it's every jungle map will have the 3 biome system. So we're hearing 2 key things here. Number one, that we may have some of these more traditional standard maps like Queensdale, like, you know, these normal, more open maps. And though they may be less content dense, I do think they hold a really significant, strong place in the game. I know I'm not the only one who's looking forward to having more of that casual, open feeling exploration than just, you know, walls upon walls layered on top of one another of incredible density. We do like the idea of these maps that are a breather. Not only are we getting those then, it seems, but specifically, expansion maps are coming that cannot be considered jungle maps. So Maguma Wastes maps, and this may have been obvious, you know, even in the first trailer we saw areas that weren't necessarily jungly, but when you think of the region as a long-standing player of this franchise, when we think of the Maguma jungle, that has always kind of incorporated more arid, dry areas too, but ArenaNet are really thinking about maps that don't use the biomes and really aren't too jungly at all. That was very, very enlightening to me. Alright, last thing on Colin, and this will segue us quite nicely into Masteries. He was talking again about the amount of content density there are in these maps, and kind of the philosophy with how dynamic events can impact players going through Heart of Thorns. It seems that the idea is as you play through that map the first time you go into Verdant Brink, the idea isn't you're going to see every single possible event possible. There are so many and they run at different times and you're only going to be there at a specific time when a meta's only pushed at a certain place. And if you're following the story, you're only going to be there for a while and you'll move on. And the reason they're doing this is very similar to their philosophy back at launch, whether they failed to hit it or not. And that's they don't want people to just blast through content once, feel like it's completely all done and seen, you know, they've really experienced everything, and then have very little incentive to go back to play those new characters or bring that main character back into these other areas. By presenting the game in this way, where you know there's a lot of stuff you still missed and you want to return, people will feel a bit better about going for stuff like Masteries. So one sentiment I've heard many people say that I think is short-sighted is this. I think Masteries should be really, really, really quick to complete. If I haven't completed all the Masteries on my first time walking through the content and I have to go back to old areas, that makes it grind and that makes it bad content, and that is me being forced to replay stuff. And I say it's short-sighted because, number one, you're asking for a mechanic that we don't even have to focus on. It's just kind of happening in the background while you'd be playing the story anyway. But more importantly, you can't look at Guild Wars 2 like that. It isn't a side-scrolling platforming game where with like no paths and you see the entire thing the first time you go through. They're really trying to build into the open world constantly this idea that there will be stuff you miss. So if you do complete it and you don't have all your masteries done, if you haven't even got one mastery done that you've been really focusing on after your first route through, the events are more complicated than you think, and you're going to see stuff you never saw before. Alright, anyway, so there you go, that's the Colin stuff. Let's move on to the new Commander Mastery with Josh. Now, before this live stream, we'd only heard about two. We'd heard about Fractals, which we have no details on, and we had heard about Precursor Crafting, which we have heard some details about, to be fair, but obviously not everything is laid bare. This really didn't affect the general experience of traveling around the world. It was unlike, you know, the Heart of Thorns masteries, where it's like you unlock this and suddenly you're finding mushrooms all over the place, or you're able to glide across all these areas that you were never able to before. There was no equivalent for Pacteria, and I think ArenaNet were trying to add that in. I don't know how well they made a truly compelling one, honestly, but let's talk about it. It's Pact Commander. I like the theme of it. The idea is, you know, you're the leader of the Pact, and you are going to be helping out, and you're influential to everyone around you. So this isn't necessarily about combat, but it's more about social tools. I'm paraphrasing from the dev himself right there. The whole idea is it's focusing on helping other people do well, and they kind of call it this mentoring idea. Another term we heard in the live stream was that this was to give a tool to people already helping others. It's not to reward people who were never helping before, but to help out those who already wanted to help. Does that make sense? Alright, so let's go into specifics and see how they realize this. It becomes quite obvious with the first mastery you get in the track. This is Mentor. Now what this does is it unlocks something for you called the Mentor badge, which you display just like a commander tag. You open the little party menu and there it allows you to become a mentor. When you toggle this on, it gives you an icon on the map just like the commander tags do. It also forces you to display a very specific title, and I'll talk about it in a second. And then lastly, as well as unlocking the mentor badge, you get access to a little tag next to your name whenever you use chat as well that describes you as a mentor, and you get a little bit of swiftness. So let's take this apart. The idea is if you like helping people, if you go back to Queensdale, you can toggle this on, and players will see that you're a mentor in map chat. They'll be able to see you on the map easily, and you'll be able to help out those who are around you, and kind of it's supposed to be another tool for you. The icon itself is a purple star. This is actually the Living World replayable missions icon that we saw, though a dev did confirm that this is actually just placeholder and it will be replaced by something unique, so you don't have to worry too much about that. My question, though, is, yeah, this sounds quite nice, but is this really that much better than a commander tag? You know, if they sat down in a meeting and thought, you know, we really want to give more social tools, you know, if I said to you guys at the start of this video, they're adding a feature that gives you more social tools, would you really think that them adding basically another commander tag style thing that isn't quite a commander tag because you don't have to pay for it would really be the best thing that they could do, and add a little bit of a mentor thing in chat? I just don't see this as being that useful. People who wanted to do this already were already around in the maps, you know, standing where the dungeon vendor was in Lion's Arch with their tag up, or already stood in Queensdale and Kessex Hills, you know, on their purple tag and saying, hey, I'll help anyone out, I'm on the purple tag if you like. People would do it anyway. Commander, this doesn't add that much to me, so it doesn't really excite me. There are some smart things. I like the fact that when you are a mentor, it forces this title on you. Why is that good? Well, it means not everyone in the whole world is going to be running the mentor tag. If everyone ran the mentor tag, it would become kind of meaningless. But because it changes your tile, everyone likes their tile. We've all got a favorite one. Maybe it looks pretty, maybe it was something really difficult to get, but it's something you want to rep. And by becoming a mentor, you kind of take that away for yourself. And I think this one specific thing is gonna do good to counterbalance the amount of random mentors we see filling up our maps all over the place. There are other few things too. When you look at World vs. World specifically, they have it disabled in World vs. World so that it doesn't interfere with commanders. This is supposed to be a PvE feature, and I think that's smart too. They describe it a little as like a stepping stone to becoming a commander. This is so you can help people out without having the 100 gold. But really, guys, this isn't anything to be crazy excited about. Last, let's talk about the 5% swiftness. They're giving you, as you invest in this line, a buff to your swiftness that gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So when you get the first mastery, it's just 5%. It puts a buff on you, only in cities, called Leader of the Pact. And this gives you a swiftness amount. And as you go deeper into the line, it goes from 5% to 33%. Don't let me confuse you as I say swiftness here. What I really mean is movement speed. This doesn't stack with swiftness or anything else. It's just like a movement speed buff you get while you're in towns, a bit like the boon swiftness. I mentioned earlier in the week that this was a little bit of a shame because it's even less incentives to speak to random NPCs around the world and in the cities who previously would be where you'd get those movement speed buffs from, but they kind of alleviate those worries a bit for me with something else in this line, which we'll talk about in a second. One other cool thing about the speed is it's party-wide. I don't think we've seen this technology before. We've never seen an effect that is just globally applied to everyone in your party. It's always been proximity based, and it will have priority over, like if you blast Might, okay, and there's 20 people stood on you, it will have priority on the people in your party, but it won't just affect everyone in your party globally. This feels new to me, and that's interesting. I wonder whether they're going to use this exact technology for other stuff, say in our difficult content later on in Heart of Thorns. Maybe this is being reused somewhere there. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit of wild speculation. Anyway, so that's the start. Next, we get productive downtime. This is very simple, very basic. You get bonus crafting XP. Alright, fine. They say that because of precursor crafting and an emphasis on crafting with Heart of Thorns, that's gonna be like a big thing. Some of you guys doubtless are crafters out there. I really don't like crafting too much in Guild Wars 2, but yeah, you know, it's a nice little perk, and hopefully it will slot nicely into the systems that are coming with Heart of Thorns. Again, this seems very city-based, and we generally think of being in the cities and stuff with crafting. One last benefit to this, though, is the way that masteries work. See, once you unlock these masteries, they are applying a count bound. What that means is once you've got your first level 80 and you get this mastery after a long time, you can make a level 1 character who gets the Leader of the Pact buff and is able to move really quickly. You get a level 1 character who themselves can be a mentor. They get these buffs, and you get a level 1 character with bonus crafting experience, which once again is making crafting slightly more lucrative for leveling. It became less lucrative when they added crafting 500 because you had to craft further into the lines to get the same rate of experience. Well, now you get a bit more craft XP, so it costs less to get the amount of levels, so there's a bit of balancing there. Alright, moving on is number 3, supply line management. This is the most interesting one to me. This will grant you access to regional merchants across Tyria with rare goods. They didn't say that these NPCs necessarily were in cities. There's a chance that these NPCs will appear in remote locations. Think of like the high-level char areas. How often do we really care about going to Iron Marches? Think about maps where there are no world bosses that people regularly go to. Think about maps that we often skip when we're leveling because they're just kind of lame. Think about mini-dungeons even that we often don't think are worth going to the effort. Maybe they can drop one of these merchants at the end of there. They said that the currency for these vendors as well is going to be karma. Also fantastic, let's face it, there's no karma sinks out there in the game that are worthwhile. Even if you still have a lot of legendaries to go for and you somewhat value it, it's kind of lame that you have an entire currency that you're only spending on one item anyway. So they're going to be available for karma, and then you could, once you bought them for karma, you can trade them on the TP. What do they sell? This is the important question, of course. Old recipes. So this is really good, because the way that ArenaNet are currently doing this is rather clunky and odd. As we all know, the game has a history of adding content that's been taken away, and that has left in its wake a lot of imbalances with recipes with certain rare items. The prime example would be the Halloween stuff from the very first Halloween is all incredibly expensive, incredibly rare. There are some stat sets that aren't even necessarily that good, like Zealot's stats, but nonetheless, because these recipes and things were released so long ago in the game, they just aren't anywhere. So the price for getting a Zealot set is way higher than the price for getting, say, a Berserker's set. And these are odd imbalances. So this is how we're now going to be able to get these recipes back. A lot of that limited, old, time-gated stuff is going to be returning to the game through these vendors and this mastery line. So if you're holding on to any of that stuff, I don't know. I've never really been much one for playing the TP, but you might want to sell? I'm not sure. They did also say there's going to be new items too. Hooray! And the one example we heard about was the Melandru backpack. So we have the Dwayne backpack, we've had the Chaos of Lissa, we've had the Grenth backpack. Now we're getting Melandru. So Melandru's going to be there. Are the other gods as well? We're going to get the full collection. But then the suggestion too would be like the recipe for Lissa, which is incredibly expensive because it was on a very specific event. Now may be sold from these guys also. So I like supply line management. I think I heard them say something about there being 7 vendors. 7 vendors, 7 days a week, and that they would move as well. Is this going to be almost a little bit Nicholas the Traveller-ish? Oh, that would be cool. And so different wares at different times. That's me predicting, though. They never confirmed that. Moving on, I need 2 more tiers to talk about. Next one is Noblesse Oblige. This one is boring again to me, unfortunately. This increases your revive speed by a really big amount if there's a big difference. If you're level 80 and they're level 1, you get huge revive speed. Not only this, but it takes away armor damage that they will have suffered from going down or dying, and downed penalty. Great. So this is supposed to be, again, hey, we're helping new players out. You know, they said on the stream, oh, this is really good because now it enables those new players to really get in and explore some of that challenging, core, tier stuff. I'm sorry, what? In the open world, you mean? You mean that stuff that doesn't actually exist? You know, all this really does is incentivize people and allow people. The point of, like, the armor damage system and the point of down penalty and stuff is so that people stop slamming their heads against brick walls, against things they shouldn't be at because they should be leveling up or doing something else, and, you know, eventually they're forced away because all of their armor's broken. That's the initial idea of systems like that. And now armor repair, and even down penalty to a point here, has been so devalued that they're just like, oh, we'll just get rid of it. And so now, you know, you can just have low players running around into super dangerous places they shouldn't be just because their friend keeps pressing F to res them. Even disregarding everything I just said, this is still fairly boring, no? All the new challenging stuff is going to be at level 80 anyway. Does this really change that much? Am I being short-sighted? I would love to hear anyone. Somebody prove me wrong. Correct me in the comments for whatever I'm missing here, because this just doesn't seem too fun to me. Lastly, advanced logistics. Okay, now we have something that we will actually want. So this is also the thing that will buff your Pact leader buff all the way up to 33%, and it gives you something called auto loot. Now, don't confuse this with, like, the AoE loot you can toggle on in your options right now. That means you press F once and everything zooms into your inventory. Don't confuse it with the system that, you know, removes that little loot box that you then individually pick what loot you want. This literally means, and imagine yourself in World vs. World, because this is where this is going to count for most, in my opinion. You're running around, you're staff one-ing the hell out of the enemy Zerg, even though your commander told you not to, because you just want lots and lots and lots of tags. You manage to wipe the enemy Zerg. There are tons of boxes everywhere. Instead of having to spam F, and I've heard of people running macros that spam F as well while they're playing. Instead of having to do that, it all automatically fills into your inventory. That's some fantastic quality of life. That truly is. And it even works if you, like, waypoint away or if you die. In World vs. World, it places the loot at your feet and then automatically goes into your inventory. That is a really, really cool feature. I've never really cared that much about these kind of quality of life things that get to the point where it's like, no, you don't even have to press F to play the game. I never really cared too much about this sort of stuff, but it is nice quality of life, especially in World vs. World. And so the one thing you might be wondering, though, and they did address this on the stream, and I was really happy about this, is you might be thinking, why the hell is this tied to a mastery? Why isn't this just baseline? And ArenaNet gave an answer. I have an answer too. I think it's important that this is at the end of a mastery track because I do like a little bit the flavor of actually feeling like I'm picking up loot and I'm not just playing some automated, streamlined thing to the point where it doesn't even feel like a game anymore. I like picking up loot. However, a much better reason, and their primary reason for this being a mastery and not just given to people by default, is to do with botting. They're hoping, because this is at the end of the line as well, because this is at the end of the line, because this is going to take a heavy investment from players to unlock, that it will disincentivize bots. I'm not sure how far that solution goes. A lot of botting is done on hijacked accounts. So someone hacks your account, they strip all your stuff, they turn your assets into gold, sell it for real world money, and then they have your account botting away. And a lot of us are going to have unlocked this already. So, I don't know. All this really does is it means people aren't going to spam buy accounts from them directly to be able to bot. It's a reason, though, so fair enough. Okay, so there you go, guys. That's the Pact commander line. That's pretty much everything that was said on points of interest today. One last thing, they did say, again, a big feature coming tomorrow with the WTS stuff and PvP side, that is. There's going to be some big PvP feature that finally rounds out how PvP is working, so I am hoping that it's going to be something big. Colin even said that, you know, this is, once they've got that, they finally feel like PvP is where it needs to be to start truly growing. They've been doing some fantastic videos on their YouTube channel on that side of things, and I've got a keen eye out. So there you go, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think. I'll keep you up to date over the coming days as tons more stuff comes in. Have a great evening, guys. Hope you're enjoying the beta.